Miss Haber.
Hello, Mr. Harrell. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm well, thank you. What are we up to?
We're going to look at the governments of Africa, two specifically.
Which ones?
Ones that we've already studied in geography.
Which countries are they?
It's going to be South Africa and Kenya.
Great. Let's go ahead and get started. Which one should we start with first?
Let's start with Kenya.
Okay.
Do you have a problem with that?
No.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go ahead and look at the standard. We are looking at explaining the structures of the modern governments of Africa. Remember that the governments change, but we're looking at the modern governments. We are comparing the Republican. I think you know what that word means. We've seen it before.
All right, who can explain it to us? Anybody out there? Can you explain it to us? Raise your hand if you can do so. Yes, we can see your hands through the monitor.
I don't see everyone's hand up.
Well, maybe some don't know. But if you do, all right, on the count of three, if you do know, please speak clearly to the monitor, but don't scream, because if you scream, we can't hear everyone. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Most of you are right. Okay, the Republican systems. We're going to see if you're right in just a second. In the countries of Kenya and South Africa. See how, in comparing, they both have the same title in their country's name.
Do you think the governments are going to be exactly alike, Ms. Haber?
No way, Jose. There's no way that governments are ever exactly alike, because remember, they never fit in that nice box. Governments can be whatever a country wants them to be, but they probably have a lot of similarities.
Okay, I will go with that similarities. Let's see.
Okay. We want to focus on the form of leadership, so the title of the leader of the country, and the role of the citizen. Remember that citizen is just a fancy word for people. The people who live or have citizenship of that country in terms of their personal freedoms, or the limit of their personal freedoms, what they can do and what they can't do.
So we're citizens of the United States.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we're going to move to the next slide. All right, so here's our vocab. Mr. Harrell, how many of the kids do you think got it right about what a republic
All right,
was?
let me check the hands. Let me look back through our data.
All right.
Okay, it only looks like about a third of them got it right this time.
Okay, well, let's hope we can improve upon that.
I'm sure we will.
Okay, republic is a state or a country. Remember, sometimes they use those words interchangeably. A state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives.
So what you're saying to me is, in a republic, the people elect their representatives.
Correct.
Okay.
They choose people to represent them
In the government.
in the government.
All right.
And remember that countries do not have an ability to have everybody be in the government, so we need to represent people. Just like student council,
So
they have representatives. Not everyone in the school can be part of our student council.
So you're saying the United States, for example, is too big for everyone to be in the government. So we have to elect certain people to do it for us.
Correct.
Okay, I got it now.
Yep. All right, so the next two vocabulary words we're going to look at, head of state. This is where the representative of the country, who may also be the head of the government, and the role is mostly ceremonial. That's the word we want you to really focus on. Head of state, ceremonial.
Okay, for example, the Queen of England, she's head of state, correct?
Exactly.
All right, so she does a lot of hosting of dinners, state dinners, and she greets the foreign dignitaries.
Correct.
Okay.
She really is a ceremonial leader. She's there. It's not really part of her everyday job to be running the government.
Okay, so she's, like we said, ceremonial. She holds no real power.
As
Okay.
far as the government's concerned.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. The next word that we're looking at, the words, I should say, is the head of the government. And that is sometimes the same person as the head of the state, but sometimes it's a different person.
Oh, like the Queen of England.
Correct.
Because so she's head of state, and the Prime Minister would be the head of government in
Correct.
Great Britain.
Correct.
Okay,
They are the person responsible for the day-to-day running. So it's really their job to make sure that the government runs smoothly. They're the people who get up. It's a 9-to-5 job. The Prime Minister goes in. He works in the government, whereas the Queen is the Queen the minute she becomes the Queen until the minute she dies. She is the Queen of England. It's not a 9-to-5 job as such. It's more, I would consider it more of a position that you hold, and this is more like a job, if you can kind of make that analogy.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Let's ask the kids this question.
Okay.
Who is head of government in the United States? Raise your hand. Don't scream out. All right, now I need you to speak slowly, but don't yell because we can't, it'll overload and we can't see who's saying what. So quietly but distinctly, who is head of government for the United States?
If you said the president, you are correct. Okay, now let's see if we can get them on this one. Who is the head of state in the United States? Who is the head of state? Who is the ceremonial leader?
Raise your hand.
If you said, haha, that's a trick question, they're trying to get me, and you said it is also the president, you are correct. So the president in the United States is both the head of state and the head of the government.
Oh, Miss Haber, you'll be glad to know that 2/3 of them got that correct.
Perfect.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, moving on.
Kenya and South Africa are both described as republics. Remember, a republic is where the people elect their representatives. In reality, the governments are very different. Anyone care to guess how? Please explain your answer to the monitor. It will report back to your teacher. I don't know is not an acceptable answer. Use prior knowledge to form an answer. Wait 1 second. Do not say anything yet.
Countdown.
1, 2, 3.
Go.
Now.
Excellent. All right. We hope you got an answer for that. We're going to move on and see if you were correct. All right, Mr. Harrell, if you're okay with it, can we start with Kenya?
I would love for us to.
Excellent. Okay, type of government. We know it's a republic. It's in the name. And the name can give you a lot of information. The type of government. And as we know, a republic just means that there are elected representatives.
And who elects those representatives?
In this case, the people.
That's correct.
The citizens, the people. Now, is it a democracy? Can we make an inference? Is it a democracy? Is it an autocracy or an oligarchy?
All right, kids. Time for you to tell us. Wait a minute. Don't all scream at once. We cannot hear you if you do that. All right, I'm going to count to 3, then say it, but don't scream. 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, most of them got it right again.
Excellent. If you said democracy, in terms of the citizen participation, you were correct. Well done. All right, so the head of government and the chief of state is actually the same person in Kenya. And in Kenya, interestingly enough, he is elected by the people, the citizens, in a direct vote. Very, very, very similar to the United States. So, similar to the USA.
All right, so let me get this straight. In Kenya, the president is elected by the people, just like the United States. And just like the United States, the head of government and the chief of state is the president, the same person.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
Yep.
I got it.
Very, very, very similar to the United States. Okay, now the interesting thing about Kenya is that they have a legislative branch called a parliament. And this, again, is elected by the citizens. This is a bit of a kickback to British colonial times, as you know from our history unit in the Africa studies. We know that Britain and other European nations came in and colonized. Kenya was colonized by Britain, and Parliament is is what's used in Britain, and so we believe that this is part of a bit of a kickback to the colonial times. They have MPs or members of Parliament, and a lot of the titles are the same. In fact, they just got away with the Prime Minister position in Kenya very recently.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. What does bicameral mean?
Well, it actually means that there are two houses. Again, very similar to the United States. We have a two-house parliament, or two-house legislative branch, I should say. And it's called bicameral, just like a bicycle has two wheels. The prefix bi meaning two, right?
All right,
there.
so it has two houses. All right, just like the United States. All right, kids, pop test. What do we call the two legislative branches that make up Congress here in the United States? There's two of them. All right, don't scream. Hold on. I'm going to count to three again. 1, 2, 3. Did you say the Senate and House of Representatives?
If you said those two,
Let me check our results. Okay, about half, a little over half got this one right.
you better remember this for next year, guys. This is going to come up a lot in 8th grade, so remember it. So, it's very, very similar. Again, if we were to do a Venn, hint, 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 you would know how to compare and contrast Kenya to USA. So again, the judicial branch has a Supreme Court and lower courts underneath it. Just like if you were to go to Fulton County Court, you would have lower courts below it, and a Supreme Court would be, for us, in Washington, D.C. Everything can go higher and higher, all the way up to the Supreme Court in terms of making decisions.
So very similar to what we have here in the United States.
Very similar.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing Mr. Harold talks about, suffrage. Do you know what suffrage means?
I think I do. It's the right to vote. Is that correct?
That is correct. When you're talking about suffrage, we're talking about who has the right to vote.
Does my niece, who is 11 years old, does she have the right to vote here in the United States?
Not yet, she doesn't.
Oh.
She has to be 18 years of age, just like the people in Kenya. And you have to be a citizen of the country.
You must be a citizen.
Yep.
Okay. That
Yep.
means, you and I are citizens of the United States, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we have the right to vote in the United States. Do we have the right to go and vote in Kenya?
Absolutely not. We are not Kenyan citizens. I have the right to vote actually in England and in America because I hold dual citizenship. I'm American and English, so I can vote in two countries. It's
You're lucky.
Very lucky. Very
Yes.
cool. So, all right, personal freedoms. We talked about this in our other units, but we, people in Kenya, have had an improvement in their human rights under this current president, and it's actually better than in most of Africa. However, do you want to talk about this one?
Freedom of speech is still limited. In other words, you can't just say anything about the government without some kind of punishment being wielded out or wielded up, some kind of punishment.
Yep.
In the United States, we can pretty much say anything we want and get away with it, but not in a country like Kenya.
Okay, child labor is also a problem, and many of you for your PSAs talked about child labor being a problem in some of the countries in Africa, and some of you even talked about it in Kenya. There also is some corruption and abusive police in Kenya.
Corrupt means they may be taking bribes, correct?
Exactly.
Somebody could pay them to look the other way.
Yep, they can be taking bribes, and some of the police may be even abusive if somebody does something that they don't agree with or they don't like, and they may issue
Strike
some,
them?
Yep,
Oh,
exactly.
that's awful.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
so, but they're working on this, correct?
They are. Under this current government, they are. All right, we hope you understand Kenyan
You're
government.
you're